Have you ever stopped to think that, in many mythologies, the gods aren't fair? They are vengeful, merciless, cruel. We humans fear going to hell. Fear punishment after death. But what if I told you that in some stories, the punishment doesn't wait for you to die? In Maniemi, Atches the gods tear the skin, shatter the body, and imprison the soul. Not for years, not for centuries, but for all eternity. And the worst part, many of these stories have been soft, hidden, or simply erased. In today's video, you'll discover the most bizarre punishments of the gods you never knew. The most bizarre, sickest, most inhuman punishments ever conceived by the human mind and attributed to beings considered divine. And I need to warn you, some of these stories will make you question if these gods were ever worthy of worship. Stick with me until the end, because the last punishment on the list is so disturbing that many people refuse to believe the myth even exists. Before we start, comment below. Do you think those who defy the gods deserve to be punished, or are these punishments just pure divine cruelty? Take a deep breath, turn off the lights, and let's descend together into the darkest side of mythology. Before we get to our list, there's one thing you need to understand. In most ancient mythologies, the gods weren't perfect beings. They were extremely human. They felt anger, jealousy, pride, and, above all, they were afraid of one thing: being challenged. When a mortal broke a rule, made a mistake, or worse, tried to become equal to the gods, the response wasn't a simple punishment. It was a public example, a punishment so brutal, so exaggerated, so absurd, that no one else would dare do the same. And it's precisely these punishments, symbolic, cruel, and often eternal, that you're about to see. Imagine being punished for helping humanity. In Greek mythology, Prometheus was a titan who felt compassion for humans. The gods lived in comfort on Olympus, while mortals froze in the dark. So Prometheus does the unthinkable. He steals fire from the gods and gives it to humans. Fire meant warmth, protection, technology. It was a gift that changed everything. But for Zeus, this was an unforgivable betrayal. As soon as Prometheus is chained to a rock on an isolated mountain. Every single day, a gigantic eagler symbol of Zeus flies to him and devours his liver. Slowly, cruelly, as if savoring the pain. The most bizarre detail. At night, Prometheus's liver regenerates completely. And the next morning, the torment begins again. There is no death as an escape. No final blackout. The pain is infinite. This myth isn't just a story of punishment. It's a clear message from the gods. If you try to steal divine power, you will pay dearly. Prometheus was punished for trying to help, and how many people today are destroyed for trying to go just a little beyond what's permitted? Have you ever had that feeling of trying and never getting anywhere? In Greek mythology, there's a character who lives this forever: Sisyphus. Sisyphus was a king, a trickster, a manipulator. He deceived gods and humans, broke agreements, and even tried to cheat death itself. In one episode, he manages to trap Thanatos, the personification of death, preventing people from dying. The gods are furious, and they decide his punishment wouldn't just be physical, it would be psychological. In the underworld, Sisyphus is condemned to push a massive boulder up a mountain with extreme effort, sweat, exhaustion. Every time he's about to reach the top, the boulder slips. It rolls back down the mountain, and he is forced to start all over again. Forever. There's no blood, no explicit screams of torture, but there's something much worse: eternal effort with no result. This story is the perfect metaphor for meaningless work, for a life lived on autopilot, a punishment so symbolic it even became a philosophical concept, a Sisyphean task. If there's one thing the gods hate, it's disrespect at a banquet. Tantalus was a privileged king. He had access to the gods, attended banquets on Olympus, had divine trust. but he decides to test the limits. In some versions of the myth, Tantalus steals food from the gods. In others, he reveals divine secrets to humans. And in the darkest version, he does something unimaginable. He sacrifices his own son, Pelops, and serves his flesh to the gods to see if they would notice. Some gods do notice. They are horrified, and they decide to give Tantalus a punishment that fits his cruelty. In the underworld, Tantalus is placed in a crystal-clear lake, with water up to his chin. Above him, branches hang heavy with the most succulent fruits you can imagine. He's starving. He is dying of thirst. When he tries to drink, the water recedes. When he tries to reach for the fruit, the branches pull away. He sees it. He smells it. He almost touches it, but he never can. It's eternal hunger and thirst, with temptation just inches away. This punishment is so symbolic that Tantalus' name gave rise to the idea of a tantalizing torture. Something you desire, but can never attain. Now, we leave Greece and go to a cold, brutal world, Norse mythology. And in this world, one of the most memorable characters is Loki, the trickster god, a shapeshifter, manipulator, unpredictable. Sometimes he helped the gods. Sometimes he betrayed them. In one of his cruelest acts, Loki is directly involved in the death of Baldur, the most beloved god of the Aesir. The gods' reaction is pure fury. They capture Loki, and the punishment is as symbolic as it is cruel. They kill one of Loki's sons. They use the child's own entrails as chains. And with them they bind Loki to rocks. Above his face, they place a gigantic serpent. From the serpent's mouth, venom drips, drop by drop, directly onto Loki's face. Each drop burns like fire. He screams, writhes, thrashes. The only break he gets is when his wife Sigyn holds a bowl under the venom. But when the bowl fills, she has to empty it. In that interval, the venom falls directly onto Loki's face, without stopping. His screams are so intense that, according to the myth, they make the earth shake, explaining earthquakes. This torture isn't temporary. It only ends at Ragnarok, the Norse end of the world. In other words, Loki is condemned to suffer until the end of time. Some crimes, to the gods, are not just mistakes. They are personal blasphemies. Ixion was a mortal king with an already dirty record. He murdered his own father-in-law and broke sacred oaths. Even so, Zeus tries to give him a second chance and invites him to a banquet on Olympus. But Ixion does something even worse. He begins to desire Hera, Zeus's wife. Zeus, suspicious, creates an illusion. A cloud in the shape of Hera, named Nephili. Ixion, deceived, lies with this false goddess. When the sham is revealed, Zeus decides to make an example of Ixion. The punishment: Ixion is bound to a wheel of fire, a gigantic, flaming wheel that spins without stopping. Ixion is tied to it, burning, spinning, with no rest, no pause, no end. It's the perfect image of regret that never ends, of guilt that spins in circles, and, again, a very clear message from the gods. Don't even think about touching what is divine property. In Egyptian mythology, death wasn't the end. It was a passage, but that doesn't mean there were no punishments. On the contrary, Egyptian punishments were terrifying precisely because they went beyond the body. They struck the soul. The Egyptians believed that a human being was made of several spiritual parts: the Ka, the Ba, the Ren, among others. When someone lived an extremely evil life, betraying the cosmic order meant the punishment after death could be worse than simple disappearance. In the famous weighing of the heart ceremony, before Osiris, the deceased's heart was placed on a scale against the feather of the goddess Mat. If the heart was heavier than the feather, it meant guilt, sin, imbalance. In that case, there was no heaven, no peace. The heart was devoured by Ammit, a monstrous creature, part crocodile, part lion, part hippopotamus. The most terrifying part wasn't the physical pain, but the idea of spiritual annihilation. the person would simply cease to exist. In some interpretations, the soul could be trapped, never completing its journey. For an Egyptian, this was the worst possible punishment, to be erased from the universe. In Hindu mythology, the punishments of the gods don't always involve blood or direct physical torture. Often, the cruelty lies in something invisible. Curses, words that destroy your entire life, a mistake, an act of pride, a lack of respect, and a god, or a powerful sage, utters a curse, and that becomes your destiny. These curses could condemn someone to lose their memory, to be reborn countless times into lives of suffering, to lose everything they love, or to see their entire lineage destroyed. The most frightening part is that many of these curses are cast in moments of anger. A phrase spoken in a fit of rage becomes the sentence for all eternity. There's no lawyer, no trial, no appeal. It's as if, in a single instant, your entire future is shattered into pieces. It's a different kind of divine cruelty, not eternal physical suffering, but spiritual imprisonment in infinite cycles of pain. If you look at all these cases, you'll notice a disturbing pattern. Many of the punished committed serious crimes, yes, but others just dared. They questioned, they challenged, and the gods' response was always the same. Absolute overkill, eternal punishments, endless tortures, physical and psychological pain taken to the extreme. Why do mythologies do this? One interpretation is that these myths served as mechanisms of control. If you want to keep a populace obedient, nothing works better than stories where anyone who steps out of line is destroyed in unimaginable ways. Another interpretation is more psychological. Perhaps these myths speak less about real gods and more about the dark side of humans themselves. We created gods in our own image and likeness. With our fears, our need for punishment, our thirst for justice, and, sometimes, our secret desire to see those who suffer without forgiveness. Perhaps, in the end, the most bizarre punishment of all isn't an eternal boulder, a devoured liver, or a flaming wheel. Perhaps the most terrifying punishment is this idea that someone is watching you all the time, noting every slip-up, every thought, every forbidden desire, and that somewhere in the heavens, the underworld, or another life tab is being run up, waiting for the right moment to be collected with infinite interest. It's the fear of invisible punishment. The anxiety of getting caught for something you might not even remember doing. These stories of cruel gods are not just ancient tales. They continue to influence, directly or indirectly, the way we see guilt, punishment, and justice to this day. Now that you've discovered the most bizarre punishments of the gods you never knew, tell me, do you think these punishments were divine justice or pure, cruel revenge? Comment below. Which of these punishments did you find most disturbing, and why? If you enjoy this dive into the darker side of mythology, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next videos. In the next episode, we're going even deeper. We'll talk about entities that feed on human suffering, and how different cultures around the world describe these beings. You won't want to miss it. Until the next video, and be careful what you promise the gods. They might be listening, and as you saw today, they never forget.